Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. This is BRN AM for Monday, October 14th, 2019. And here are your top stories. Americans are stashing cash and older Americans are taking a bite into coding. Well, today is Social Media Monday, and that means we take a look at the latest trends on social media. And joining me to discuss from San Francisco, California, Devin Banerjee. He's a senior financial services editor for LinkedIn. Devin, good morning and happy Social Media Monday.
Happy Monday, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing well. You have a nice weekend?
I did. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're always full of good nuggets of information. And as you heard at the very outset of my opening monologue, or at least what the headlines were, it sounds like many Americans are putting more and more money in cash. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this was quite a stunning survey coming out of MetLife last week. They surveyed just over 8,000 U.S. adults and found that almost 1/5 of them, 17%, are starting to hold more physical cash in their homes. I even went to the survey to make sure, that this was the right wording, and it is true. About 1/5 of Americans are starting to hold more physical cash, and this is because of all of this talk that we hear about, all of this media attention on a potential recession. And I'll get into some of the dangers of that in a second. But some more results from the survey. About 21% have become more conservative with their use of cash and their investments. The good news is about 40% do say they're saving more, at least, although 17% are saving in cash, which we'll talk about. And yeah, let's just get into some of the dangers of holding cash, which I'm sure you'll agree, Jeff. Obviously, you're not earning anything on that.
Nope.
And there is some inflation, and so you're losing your purchasing power, basically. Physical cash can be destroyed. It can be forgotten. And for young people especially, which you and I talk about all the time, I mean, there are alternatives to holding cash that are very powerful, especially powerful if you're young and are going to be holding and can hold that cash for a long time, even decades. I mean, there are safe savings, there are insured savings accounts that can offer, even these days, upwards of 2% annually. There are money market funds. There are just so many other options. So this was quite surprising. And I think it goes to the point and the danger of, as I mentioned at the outset, all of this talk about recession. It really can affect and impact behavior, and it can impact spending and saving decisions like this. And I think there's that danger that people sometimes talk about, which is we can talk ourselves into a slowdown or potential recession with all of these headlines, basically.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, and not to make light of this, but when they say they're keeping it in cash, where exactly might they be keeping it? I mean, are they keeping it under the mattress? Are they keeping it in a safe? Are they keeping it in their wallets? I mean, all the things you pointed out, even with low inflation, you're losing money. Potential to lose it, potential to have it burned or lost or even stolen. If I'm a thief, I look at that MetLife survey and I'm like, oh, I should be, I get 17% chance of striking it rich.
I know. Yeah, I'm not sure where exactly they're holding it, but I think it's just in drawers and cupboards and closets, basically. But yeah, I went to check the wording. It's holding physical cash in their home. As I said, the good news is that 40% of people are saving more. At least people, I think, are thinking more about how to be conservative and cautious in down environments. But, some of the experts, the financial advisors that started discussing this on the LinkedIn platform when we featured it, came up with some pretty obvious solutions. I mean, the first one of which is to just ensure, as you and I talk about all the time, that people, especially young people, are utilizing their workplace saving plans, if it's a 401k, especially if the employer can match some of your contributions to ensure you're getting that maximum match. I mean, basically advisors are saying just, dollar cost average, meaning put a consistent amount into some kind of plan like a 401k over time. But as I mentioned, there are also, safe insured savings plans. Even some people even mention robo-advisors. I mean, look, they sometimes you have to check the fees on a robo-advisor and see all the costs and benefits, but at least it's something that can keep you on a plan for the long term, right, and can keep you from some of these sentimental swings in the market or in the economy.
Well, I understand an allocation in cash. I guess what I'm not understanding is why the hesitancy to keep it in a bank. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So maybe there's some more information on that. But we're not near a 2008 situation where banks are borrowing. Remember the old capital purchase program to boost their capital, risk-based capital. That doesn't really exist. As you pointed out, FDIC insured. Are people aware of financial instruments like certificates of deposit, which pay some level of interest over a 3, 6, 9, 12, 24-month period of time? Does this speak more, Devin, to lack of financial literacy or hesitancy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jeff, I mean, my gut is that it speaks more to lack of literacy and education, that people don't even realize there are safe, insured alternatives. I mean, I think your reaction is similar to mine, which is why the need for physical cash in the home. That's quite dangerous. There are safe, insured other alternatives. So I think it has to go to just a lack of education. And you and I have talked about this. We talk about this all the time, that for many of these people probably who are surveyed, who are 18 or older, by the way, but maybe those who haven't, and I'm going to say those who haven't gotten a higher degree education or something like that, but even those programs, financial literacy is never a requirement or a core curriculum. I mean, this is something that's lacking from schools, from high schools, where people start earning their own money and making spending and saving decisions. There are no curricula around this, I think, in a mandatory way. So I think this really speaks to that lack of education around these topics.
Yeah, well, later in the week, we're going to be talking to the Treasurer of Utah, David Damchen, and I know financial literacy is something he's extremely passionate about, and they're doing something in Utah. And actually, the state treasurers around this country you'll hear about this in the interview. We'll ask them about it, but the state treasurers in this country really focus on that. Sounds like we've got a lot of work to do, and it sounds like we've got a lot of work to do on this show. Maybe we should do a show at some point on banking, certificates of deposit, and budgeting. Really great story. We're going to hold you over until after the commercial break, if you wouldn't mind, Devin. I know it's early out there on the West Coast, but if you wouldn't mind, stay tuned. And you too, stay tuned at home. We'll be right back with Devin Banerjee and more information on Social Media Monday. Stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. Devin Banerjee, Senior Financial Services Editor from LinkedIn, still with us. Devin, thanks for sticking around with us this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff.
And I know you've got another great story that you have been covering on the platform, and it's about older Americans, and I don't know what you mean by older, we'll have to learn about that, are actually taking a bite of the coding apple. What can you tell us about that? I'm excited.
Yeah, really passionate conversation around the story last week on the platform, Jeff. But essentially, we're seeing more and more older Americans reskilling, right? And this is something we've been seeing the need for in this economy over this entire cycle of the past decade. But one of those areas of skilling where there are a lot of jobs to be had is around learning to code software. And so we're seeing about 10% now of these software coding boot camp graduates over the age of 40. And that's up from essentially zero when these coding boot camps began. And really this is coming from that demand and that drive for these types of jobs. So the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, projects a 15% increase, 1.5, in the number of web developer jobs specifically over the next decade. Similar numbers projected to increase for other types of coding and programming. And these are far and away some of the jobs that are projected to increase the most over the past decade. And we're seeing these older Americans, as I said, over the age of 40, I think realizing, as you and I talked about, Jeff, that they may need to be working longer, in large part, probably because of perhaps their lack of savings. And the numbers are showing people are living longer now too as well. They know they will need to earn more and to save more if they would like to eventually have a retirement. So again, as I said, more than 45 million people worldwide have completed a course on one of these bootcamp programs, Code Academy. And Code Academy says about 1 million of those people were actually over the age of 55. So this is something we're seeing people of that entire age range above 40 taking advantage of. And some of the benefits are, a lot of these are online. Some of these are free courses. They're much less expensive than graduate degree courses that may put you into some debt. If you wanted to reskill and go back to graduate school. We're also seeing schools, community colleges, and even some universities starting to partner with these boot camp organizations to offer them on campuses at a low cost. And so right now, actually in the US and Canada, there are more than 100 of these in-person immersive programs and even more online. So a really interesting stat, and as I said, and as you said, really goes toward that trend of people realizing that reskilling and continual education is really the number one way to remain competitive in this workforce, to continue to be attractive to employers and for different roles. And as these people realize they need to save more and earn more, this has been a very attractive route.
And you know what I love about when you're a coder, and my business degree is in information systems, so I learned how to code in COBOL and VBA and really in C, and really haven't kept up with it. But the great thing about today is you can code in Python and you don't have to be in the office. You can be sitting on a boat somewhere. So even people who are thinking about retiring can sit and code for 5 hours. They don't have to work a full day. They can code on a boat. They can code as long as there's internet access. You can code. And I think that's an amazing story because it kind of is counter to everything that we always hear, that the more seasoned of us don't vacillate towards technology. I think it's the opposite. I think they want to learn technology. I think they want to figure out a way to be relevant and contribute. And you know what? When you learn these basic, you learn the letters and you learn the alphabet, then you learn how to phrase sentences. You're able to really build things and maybe new tools and things that could help people of your own age or a different cohort.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you said, which is this story really turns on its head several assumptions that we've had in the traditional workforce and economy. One of which is, degrees are so important in college and graduate school. I think we're seeing less and less of that all the time. It's really the practical rubber meets the road skills that you can bring to an employer and a job. And people can sometimes, there's a great anecdote in the story that we featured about a woman who's age 55 and totally reskilled, learned coding, and got a web developer job remotely. And that's that second assumption, which is remote working, as you said. There's such a rise in remote working. More and more companies no longer care as much where their workers are based, as long as people can get the job done. And so all of these trends are kind of intersecting and making this type of path and route among those who want to reskill very, very popular.
And let's just to break it down for the audience. I mean, coding today is not like it was even 10 or 15 years ago. There's a lot of GUI, graphic user interface, where it actually puts the underlying code in. You can just move blocks and it inserts the code underneath. And just to also give you a little bit of conceptually, when Steve Wozniak was helping to build the Apple II, he didn't have a compiler to write the original BASIC. This even predates you, Devin, but you probably remember the Apple II. He actually hand wrote the BASIC, and it wasn't floating point BASIC. It hand wrote BASIC for the Apple II because it didn't have a compiler. So times have really changed. It's something that anybody can get into, even younger people who are in high school, but even older. This makes me feel good. I love the fact that seasoned people are doing this, people my age and older. And I think people are really heeding the lesson and reskilling. I think a lot of what we hear in the media and in other venues may not be accurate.
Yeah, and there's one last point I'll make, which is this great quote in the story, which is a lot of people fear or are a bit anxious that reskilling means leaving your field and trying to enter a new one. With coding in particular, there's this great quote from the CEO of Code Academy, who says it's not just about coding as a career field that you enter and leave your current career field, but how coding skills could actually work in the field you're already in. A lot of employers are already in, even if they're not technology companies or employers, have technologists working for them. And you can move internally with these skills you learn, or you could be a remote worker. So there are many more options than people assume.
Absolutely. Well, Devin, great stories. It makes me feel good. Good way to start off the week, but you always have good stories. A great way to start Social Media Monday. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you on the podcast.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
And folks, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. It's the start of a new week. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think that we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.